One final story here on the show, and that is the ACC bombshell. The ACC bombshell that we have realignment related. It is not, hey, Team A is leaving or Team B is leaving or whatever it might be. But one of the most, I would say, one of the most commonly held beliefs and something that's been talked about a lot throughout this whole process of the ACC suing Florida State and Clemson and vice versa, that the whole mess of lawsuits that they have, the worry about North Carolina leaving, the worry about anybody else, Miami, whoever, the worry about ACC implosion. A ton of the conversation has surrounded one piece that we now have new reporting on that actually doesn't seem to be anything at all. We've been a bit duped, and I don't think anybody directly duped anyone here, but it's just merely didn't have the full picture of this until we got the reporting now from The Athletic. So the ESPN part of all this, right? The ESPN contract, we thought went until 2036 until it was reported, oh, wait, there's actually a look-in for ESPN. That means it could be terminated in 2027. And that was, some of that came from, I guess I say reporting, some of that came from the lawsuit as well. And all of a sudden that became just the way everybody treated it. All right, well, the decision has to be made by February of this year, whether or not you're going to extend it beyond 2027. That is a huge risk for the ACC. And everybody just took that at face value for what it's worth. But in the words of the great Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. Not so fast, my friend. It appears that is not actually the case. So I'm going to read to you from this story in The Athletic. And we've also got some more details from Jim Phillips later on as well, and his thoughts on, what's going on with the current state of college athletics. But to date, the look-in period has been viewed nationally as something of an inflection point for the ACC. Were ESPN to not pick up the option on its deal with the ACC, in theory, the league would be back on the media rights market in 2027, or much more likely susceptible to a new wave of conference realignment, especially with Clemson and Florida State already suing the league. But here's the key. Here's the big sentence for you. That's the setup. Let's put it on the tee. Let's swing the bat. But that entire notion appears to be based on a misconception, or at least a misunderstanding of what February's look-in period actually entails. Okay. So it doesn't actually mean that ESPN could terminate the entire deal here, which in effect could just drop the grant of rights, all of those things that would allow some of these schools to go running away. The article says that's because the ACC actually has 2 media rights deals with ESPN. 2 media rights deals. One, its base deal, which was originally signed before the ACC network was announced in 2016, and which focuses on ACC programming on Disney's main networks. So that'd be ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, etc. That's the base deal, not the ACC network part. That's the base deal. What's on the main networks? The other deal was signed in 2016, and it deals specifically with the ACC network. Why does that discrepancy matter? Because only the base deal is a part of February's look-in period. The second, the ACC network-specific deal, already runs through 2036, which had not previously been reported, and it overlaps with the grant of rights. So the base deal is a part of the February look-in period, but the ACC network portion of the deal, that still has everybody tied up until 2036 and still has everybody tied up with the grant of rights. So that does dramatically change things. It certainly lessens the importance of that date in early February that was thought to be, and I guess still is theoretically, the deadline for whatever negotiating is going to be done around the base deal. But it does not mean it's just a clean break. It does not mean ESPN could just do a clean break here and say, we don't like the way the ACC is headed. We don't like where all this is going. We don't like the Florida State Clemson thing. We want to, if you're more a conspiracy theorist here, we want to rearrange the pieces on the chessboard and get Clemson and Florida State into the SEC. For whatever reason, they can't just say, hey, we'll cut off the TV deal and do that. So that is pretty significant. Like that is, we had really taken that and run with it because there had not been reporting to suggest otherwise. Though I did see, and shout out to my guy, Greg Flugar, you should all follow his channel, Peek Around the Corner. I did see he said that that's something that he had reported previously. So Greg has been on top of that and typically is. The article goes on to say, translation, even if ESPN for some unknown reason opted not to finalize an extension of the base deal through 2036, then the ACC would still have a media rights deal with ESPN that runs through 2036, which would seemingly protect any league from poaching. And it also said, to be clear, it is Phillips and the industry's expectation the extension will be picked up. And the important part of that is the industry. Nothing against Jim Phillips, even though, you know, I am not always the biggest fan of him. But of course, the commissioner is going to say, yeah, everything will be fine. Of course, he's going to say that. But if it's the industry expectation that they think that that will still be picked up too, then that's an important note in the story. It also says, and what incentive would ESPN have to decline the ACC's premier inventory? Instead, Phillips and the ACC are approaching the look-in as a way to negotiate in the margins of its base deal and maximize value for both the league and ESPN. So, got to give it to Jim Phillips. I mean, this is kind of what he's been saying for a while now. Jim Phillips has been like, look, things are going fine. We're trying to negotiate to find ways to make more money. Phillips said that could include negotiating better time slots for ACC games, putting more ACC games on the network's top channels instead of the ACC network, and discussing ancillary revenue splits with areas like advertising and carriage fees. Yeah, I mean, here's another quote. It's kind of a funny quote to me. We've had very, very, very good conversations with them, Phillips said, and I fully expect that to get done. 3 varies. Very, very, very good conversations with them. We would all be best suited to just let it play itself out, watch what happens, though. That's on the college football playoff. Okay, so some final thoughts there. Good reporting, great reporting from The Athletic here to get us that detail. It doesn't necessarily really systemically change a whole lot with the situation in the ACC. Now, you know, some of the most recent reporting along those lines in general suggests that there are other conversations happening that could stop the Florida Clemson bleeding and could shut that down and could keep the league around a little bit more. Still up in the air. We don't know, but the tenor has definitely changed to where it doesn't seem quite as dire a straits for the ACC. I am still a little skeptical of Florida State and Clemson and just everybody in the league coming on board with what was proposed fairly recently with all that, you know, this kind of effort to appease Florida State and Clemson enough, but it's at least something. And now you have this